After another tough game week for a lot of FPL managers, the wildcard chip is becoming a very popular strategy ahead of game week 8 and something I'm personally considering as well. So in this video, I'm going to reveal what I think is the best game week 8 wildcard draft, a few surprising picks and omissions, so you want to make sure you stick around to the end of this video. Make sure you do drop a like and of course smash that subscribe button. Without further ado, let's get into today's video. Okay, first up, I want to show you guys the players that I think are essential Game Week 8 wildcard players. I think this is a really good way of going about when you are building any sort of draft, because you allocate the positions that you know you definitely want to own, see how much budget that is, and then you know how much you have left to allocate in other positions in the squad. Now again, this is totally subjective. You may not deem some of these essential, but in my eyes, I would not build a wildcard draft without these picks. So first up in goal, West Ham's Areola. Now, this could either be your starting goalkeeper or part of a goalkeeper rotation. But West Ham this season are looking pretty good defensively. I wouldn't say they're the best in the league, but when we are picking a goalkeeper, we want them to be cheap, playing in a team that we can kind of rely on and offer themselves for both bonus and save points. And with Areola being the second highest goal scoring keeper in the game, he is ticking all of those boxes right now. And the fact that he's only 4.2 million just proves that he is unbelievable FPL value. Now, obviously, those that had him at 4 million at the start of the season, congratulations, you've got yourself an absolute FPL gem, but still a great pickup for those that don't own him in a wildcard draft. And as I said, in this draft that I'm building, he will be part of a goalkeeper rotation that I'll come on to later, which I think really works well from a budget perspective. Now, in terms of the defenders, I've picked two that I do think are non-negotiables in my eyes, and those are going to be Matty Cash and Spurs' Udogie. Now, first up, Matty Cash. Unbelievable performance once again from Aston Villa, and Matty Cash getting a start at right back. I think there were a few question marks about whether his game time would be rotational or whether he would be locked in as a right back or a right winger. We are seeing right now that he is playing as a right back, but a very, very offensive right back under this Unai Emery system. We can see that with the XG per 90 being at 0.31, one of the highest of all defenders in the game. With the long-term fixtures of Aston Villa looking unbelievable, yes, they do have the Europa Conference League to contend with, but I don't necessarily think Matty Cash is one of those that's going to get rotated all of the time in the Premier League. I think a lot of players will get rotated from time to time, and we need to accept that that is going to happen with a lot of FPL players. I think Matty Cash kind of ticks all those boxes as being one of the few defenders in the game that has those double-digit hauls available to him. Amazing fixtures, and playing in a team that I can trust. That is the big thing. Aston Villa are one of those teams that I think could play any fixture and have the opportunity of keeping a clean sheet. Now, Udogie is the other one. I think a lot of managers have had him since game week 1, so they built up some value in him, and that probably means that selling him isn't an option. But I also think he's still an option for you to buy, even if you haven't owned him so far this season. 4.7 million. Now, what I would argue is Pedro Porro of Spurs at right back is probably my preferred option, but Udogie's played every minute. 4.7, so being a bit of a cheaper option. The underlying numbers aren't amazing. XG per 90 is 0.05 and expected assist is 0.19 per 90. But with the fixtures coming up for Spurs, Luton away and Fulham at home in the next two, I just think it's really difficult to go without an attacking option in that Spurs defence. And Udogie kind of ticks all those boxes right now. So those are the two defenders that I deem essential right now. The other positions are up for grabs. Next up, the midfielders. Now, Son and Maddison in terms of a Spurs double up. Again, I get it. Some managers might think that is too much of an overkill on the Spurs midfield. But as I mentioned, Luton away followed by Fulham at home. I don't think we overthink it right now. I think we just go for the double up of Son and Maddison. Right now, at the time of recording, Man United are just playing awfully. Rashford and Bruno Fernandes at a similar price point just can't be considered ahead of someone like Son. One could argue that Maddison maybe is the one that could come out of this team if we don't want to go for the double up of Spurs, because in my eyes, Son is absolutely essential. The one problem is he is coming off slightly early, around the 70-75 minute mark. But for me, 75 minutes against Luton and Fulham are enough. And we know that all of the FPL community are moving towards him. So if you go without him, I just think it is a massive mistake. But looking at Maddison's numbers, 0.26 XG per 90 and 0.36 expected assists per 90. These are unbelievable numbers. And at 7.9 million, this is a player that you could just bring into your wildcard team and leave for the long term, knowing that if later down the line he doesn't put up the numbers that you want to see from a returns perspective, he could be the cash cow in the team to go elsewhere. But right now, I just don't see a world where we go without both Son and Maddison in our FPL teams. And Salah is going to be the other one. Now, if you're wildcarding right now, I just think you have to put Mo Salah in. Now, what I will say is, in terms of goal scoring, it isn't the same Mo Salah that we've seen in years gone by. This time, about last season or seasons before, he might have 8 or 9 goals. He's only scored 1 open play goal. And what we've seen in this Liverpool team, he's become much more of a chance creator. His expected assists per 90 is 0.64, which is ridiculous. Some of the highest we have seen from him. Whereas his expected goals per 90 is only 0.57. Now, the main worry I have regarding Salah is that his non-pen XG per 90 is only 0.34. So that isn't the numbers that we're used to seeing with Salah. We're used to seeing that probably doubled in years gone by. So we're not seeing the same goal scorer in Mo Salah. However, with the fixtures coming up for him, away against Brighton in the upcoming game week, which I don't think is a bad fixture at all. And then after that, we know they have the brilliant fixtures of Everton at home, Nottingham Forest at home. The fixtures get great for the next 4 after that. And we know, again, similar to the Son situation, the community is going to move towards Mo Salah regardless. So if you're wildcarding right now and you go without Mo Salah, you're going to get to game week 9 or 10 thinking to yourself, I need to get him in. And then you're going to have to use lots of free transfers to squeeze him in and restructure your team. Just don't play around with it. Get Mo Salah in your teams. And last up with one of the centrals is going to be Erling Haaland. Now, I know a lot of FPL managers out there that are debating going without Erling Haaland in their teams. And I get it. This isn't necessarily the same Erling Haaland we are seeing from a points perspective, but he's still getting the big opportunities. We've seen him miss so many chances. And I do not doubt the goal scoring ability of Erling Haaland as long as he continues to get the chances. And yes, he didn't necessarily get them against Wolves, but that was one game week in isolation. I think it takes a very brave FPL manager to go against Erling Haaland. Now, if you were to go against him, maybe the time is now because they have Arsenal away in game week 8, followed by Brighton, followed by Man United. However, we've seen Brighton defensively, and I fancy them against this Man United team right now. So although this game week coming up doesn't look very good for Erling Haaland, and I do get it, maybe we go with captaincy on another player. If you're wildcarding right now, we need to plan for the long term. And I just don't see a world where we don't have Erling Haaland in our wildcard teams long term. However, if you weren't on a wildcard and you maybe planned a wildcard in a game week 9 or 10, then I get the logic of maybe selling Erling Haaland for 1 or 2 game weeks and coming back to him in a later on wildcard. So those are my essentials. Let me know your thoughts in the comments. Let's move on to the rest of the wildcard draft. So first up, looking at the goalkeepers, I don't really think there are standout goalkeepers this season so far. Years gone by, we've had a 4.5 million goalkeeper that's put his hand up and we just have all gone to him and he has been the mainstay for the entire season. Don't really feel like we've got that this season. So as I mentioned, Areola is essential and you could definitely have him as just your starting goalkeeper in that West Ham team. But I've gone for the Matt Turner-Areola rotation initially. Now, the reason why I say initially is because there are a little bit of question marks about Matt Turner's game time long-term in the Nottingham Forest team because we know they have a very good backup goalkeeper, which is the expectation to compete for him for the #1 spot. So the original plan is for him to rotate with Areola. And looking at the fixtures that you will get for the long term, you will basically get Turner for Crystal Palace away and Luton at home. Then Areola at home against Everton. Then you'll get Aston Villa at home, Forest at home, Burnley away, Everton at home, Fulham away. Really good long-term fixtures with the rotation of these 2 goalkeepers. Now again, we might get a situation where Matt Turner loses his place and you will simply have West Ham's Areola as your #1 goalkeeper. But I really don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. I would think West Ham defensively have looked good this season. So although there's a risk between this, I think it is fine longer term because we need to allocate a lot of this budget towards the midfield in this wildcard draft. So sacrifices need to be made elsewhere. And I think the goalkeeper department, with no real standout goalkeeper this season, is the position to do that. Now, moving into the defenders, as I said about the goalkeepers, we had to make sacrifices from a money perspective. The same is going to apply to the defenders. I would love to bring Kieran Trippier into this team, but realistically, I've been trying to fit him in alongside Haaland, Salah, Son, and I just can't find a balanced squad to do so. If you have built one, let me know in the comments, but I've had to go for the cheap option in Dan Burn. Currently, we don't know the injury status long-term of Botman. It sounds like he's going to definitely miss game week 8. After that, we don't really know the long-term of it because, of course, we have the international break between it. But Burn just seems like an obvious pick at 4.5 million. He isn't glamorous at all. Yes, he might get a few goals from set pieces, but I'm not expecting loads from it. He just is an initial investment into that popular Newcastle defence. I don't think we can go without a Newcastle defender in this wildcard team because of the ownership of them. Gone for Goalkeepers at 4 million. I can't lie. If you want to go cheaper, you definitely can. Maybe Charlie Taylor of Burnley. That will save you 0.1 million. I've just put him in. I'm not going to need this fifth sub in terms of defender, hopefully. So fifth defender is going to be Goalkeepers. Not really that fussed about him. But the other one is going to be Gabriel of Arsenal. Now, I'm not about other players available in the game. But if I'm planning a long-term team, at 4.7 million, I think Gabriel is an absolute steal. This Arsenal team, we need to remember, is going to be your top 2 team in the Premier League. And defensively, I still really do back them. I think they've got their back four sorted now with Zinchenko, Saliba, Gabriel and Ben White. And rare between the sticks just adds that confidence to the general team and potential clean sheets. So Gabriel at 4.7. Yes, it doesn't look good this week, obviously, against Man City. And I think that will be the reason why a lot of FPL managers avoid him. But I think come game week 9, 10 or 11, you're going to look at it and think to yourself, damn, why didn't I just pick up Gabriel knowing that he is going to be literally a set and forget for the long term? And I really do think he's going to fly completely under the radar. And remember, he is also a massive set-piece monster. Could easily pick up a goal or two in the next 10 game weeks. Now, looking at the midfielders, we already allocated a lot of the budget towards Son, Salah and Maddison. So I didn't have the luxury of being able to bring in a Bukayo Saka or even somebody like an Odegaard into this midfield. I just simply didn't have the budget available. If I did, I absolutely would bring in an Arsenal midfielder. But those are one of the sacrifices that I've had to make right now, knowing that they have a little bit of a trickier period. And then I think we can go back into them later down the line if we want to. As I said, maybe if you want to use Maddison as a bit of a cash cow for Martinelli when he does return back to the Arsenal team. But I've gone for 2 players that I think are really good value at their price points. And that is first up going to be Aston Villa Diaby. Now, at the time of recording, a slight injury risk going into game week 8. So if you are building a wildcard team, I would just monitor the situation because, of course, if he's ruled out, then we need to look at alternatives available in the game. And maybe someone like a Bowen, if you can afford it, or a James Ward-Prowse would be the alternative. But if Diaby is confirmed fit, this is another example of a player that we need to just put in our teams and set and forget long term. He isn't necessarily getting the goal scoring that we were expecting from him, but he has been an absolute creative monster in this Aston Villa team. And his returns are so consistent, playing alongside Watkins in that formation of Unai Emery. The fixtures long term are amazing for Villa. Don't need to double think it. Just bring in Diaby into your teams and he will be a long term set and forget. Now, the fifth midfielder has been the one that has really been split, in my opinion, for this team. I've gone on Eze right now at 6.2 million, but it is worth noting there are a lot of other options available. As I mentioned, James Ward-Prowse. You could go down to maybe Wolves' Neto. Remember, Anthony Gordon is now suspended, so he isn't an FPL option for wildcarders. But I think Eze's been really unlucky so far this season. He's only picked up 1 goal and 1 assist in the opening 7 game weeks, but looking at his underlying numbers, XG per 90 0.31 and expected assists at 0.24 are really solid underlying numbers. It suggests to me that he is, I'm not going to say getting unlucky, but I think the future returns are definitely there to be had for Eze. And while a lot of FPL managers are moving away from him, I think it might be a good opportunity maybe to jump back on him with some favourable Crystal Palace fixtures coming up. So that is my midfield 5 for the wildcard. I think there is a few, like I said, if Diaby's ruled out, where we could change. But otherwise, I really do like the look of the balance of that midfield 5. And last up is going to be the forwards. Now, of course, we have Haaland locked in. With the midfield 5 that I've gone for, we don't have the luxury of going for 3 forwards. So I've picked Archer at 4.5 million. That just seems like the obvious pickup right now, especially with his price actually not increasing. Great time to jump on him in case he does go on a bit of a run at Sheffield United. You're on it early doors and you've got a player that starts if you need it. But the big one is obviously going to be the forward that plays alongside Erling Haaland. Now, the names that are currently at the top of my head, Gabriel Jesus, Watkins, Darwin Núñez, of course Alvarez, are the ones that are currently floating around. I've currently gone for Watkins. Now, that probably feels like it's points chasing because he had a 23-point haul. Congratulations to anyone that did have him in game week 7. And that isn't going to happen every game week. So for those that are buying him, just remember, this is Watkins, a guy who doesn't notoriously score week in, week out hat tricks. But what I do know is that he plays every minute in one of the most consistent teams in the Premier League. and he is also just an absolute pest. He's always going to be involved in this Aston Villa team. He isn't one of those players that kind of chucks his arms up. And the reason why I'm saying that is because I know what I'm getting from Watkins. I'm getting a workhorse. And even if he doesn't necessarily get the goals, he is going to be involved in some form or another in this Aston Villa team. Now, we need to remember he isn't on penalties, which is a little bit of a problem. But even without the penalties, his XG per 90 is 0.6 and his expected assist is 0.25. It begs the question, why didn't we just stick with our gut and keep Watkins from game week 1 until the end of the season? We know what we're getting with him, just Mr. Consistent. Now, as I said, I do think there are other options available, but the reason why I like going for Ollie Watkins right now in a wildcard team, first and foremost, the fixtures long-term are unbelievable for Aston Villa, and I think you could just put him in and set and forget. But I also like him because he is probably the most expensive of the options that I've discussed. And if all of a sudden Darwin Núñez becomes an asset that we literally have to own, you can easily downgrade from Ollie Watkins to Darwin Núñez. If you were to do the opposite and start with Darwin Núñez and then Ollie Watkins continues the goal scoring form, you need to have that cash in the bank or a free transfer available to maybe downgrade someone in your team to then upgrade Darwin Núñez to Watkins. I don't think we need to overthink it. Start with Watkins, keep him in your team long term, and then if you get the temptation to move towards maybe a more explosive asset, you can do so in the coming game weeks. Yes, guys, okay, so that's going to wrap up today's video. I really hope it has provided some value. And if you are currently on a wildcard, let me know what your current draft looks like in the comments section. As I said, I'm still debating whether to pull the trigger or not on my wildcard team, but I will be revealing my transfer plans in the next video. So if you haven't already, make sure you are subscribed to the channel. And of course, if you enjoyed the video, make sure you drop a like. And I will see you guys in the next one. Take care. Cheers.